Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Hadro in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thanks for joining us. In this week's show, a Texas bishop clarifies why a directive on Texas' right to life was sent out to the state's Catholic churches. Child Euthanasia, a Canadian group, sounds the alarm on the possibility, and this.
It has been incredibly special to be a resource for other adoptees to feel comfortable enough to share their story, and this kind of reaffirms them that their life is worthy.
One young man's emotional journey to meet his biological parents is captured in a new documentary. Hear this story of adoption over abortion. But first, our top story, the U.S. bishops are urging the faithful to flood Congress with emails and calls to enact the Conscience Protection Act as part of the 2018 funding bill. In a joint statement released this week, the chair of the U.S. Bishops' Pro-Life Committee, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, and the chair of the Religious Liberty Committee, Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, write, "Increasing and fierce attacks on conscience rights regarding abortion cry out for an immediate remedy. Opponents and supporters of abortion should be able to agree that no one should be forced to participate in abortion." The Conscience Protection Act would bar the federal government and any state and local government that receive federal funding from taking action against healthcare professionals who conscientiously object to performing, paying for, or participating in any procedure they find morally objectionable. We have seen instances in the U.S. when pro-life doctors and nurses have faced discrimination for refusing to participate in abortions. President Donald Trump has promised to sign the piece of legislation which has passed the House of Representatives, but not the Senate. The U.S. bishops are asking the faithful to put the pressure on Congress in the coming week, especially on Monday, March 12th. We are joined now by Representative Brad Wenstrup of Ohio, who is also a Catholic and pro-life doctor. Congressman, you have supported the Conscience Protection Act. Do you think this renewed call from the U.S. bishops and other pro-life leaders for Congress to enact it will make a difference?
I think it will make a difference. Every voice that we can hear from or have other members hear from can be helpful. That's how it works around here a lot of times. I think this is something that's long past due. Unfortunately, that we even have to do this, but that's the situation that we're in, and I hope we can get it done and get it done soon, especially before the end of this year, but I would hope sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Congressman, I want us to take a listen to part of a speech from Catholic nurse Kathy DiCarlo, who says she was forced to participate in an abortion. Take a listen.
My supervisor insisted that I had to do the abortion and that if I didn't assist, I would be charged with insubordination and abandoning my patient. I watched in horror as the doctor dismembered and removed the baby's bloody limbs. And I had to account for all the pieces.
Congressman, what is your reaction to that? How was that able to happen here in the United States?
Well, first of all, being against abortion, I just can't imagine, and in her case, having to even be there and it being forced to watch something that you're so vehemently against. And that in a country where you're free, that they're telling you must participate in something, even if it's against your religion. And I'm sorry, when it comes to these types of things, when people are forcing you to do things that go against your moral character, that's completely uncalled for. And what does that have to say about freedom in this country? People should be able to make decisions that they're comfortable with, that adhere to their morals, and not be forced and threatened to maybe lose their job if they don't do that. That to me is just unbelievable, and my heart goes out to her to even have to witness that, and especially for that poor child that was aborted.
You have been a physician yourself for over 30 years. From that perspective, why is conscience protection especially crucial when it comes to health care?
Well, we're going to start saying that doctors have to perform certain surgeries that they don't want to do. How is that good for patient care? First of all, if you're a patient, would you want somebody operating on you that, one, isn't trained to do a procedure, and two, doesn't want to do the procedure? I don't think so. But this is what we're starting to see, where our government is trying to force people into doing things they don't want to do. outside of things like abortion, et cetera. In my own practice, even though something might have even been within my scope of practice, if I had a partner in my orthopedic group that could do it better, that's who I sent someone to. We weren't forced to have to perform a procedure. That is unbelievable and uncalled for. And who do you think is going to want to go into medicine in the future if that's the way it's going to be? Our physicians are to have virtue and moral character and be able to do what they feel comfortable doing. And if the idea of the government telling them you have to do something is absolutely unheard of and dangerous.
Congressman, as I mentioned, you yourself are Catholic and pro-life, but do you see this piece of legislation, the Conscience Protection Act, as something that all sides can support, not just pro-lifers?
I would hope that there are people beyond pro-lifers that can see the value of this act and the value that it would play in our healthcare system and in general, and as far as freedom. So I do hope that it's a nonpartisan issue that we can push forward. And if we can't, I don't know what that says about America, to think that we want a government that's going to force you into performing surgical procedures and medical procedures that you aren't comfortable with or don't agree with. That is really hard to take.
It is Congressman Brad Wenstrup of Ohio. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thank you.
For reaction and analysis, we are joined now by our trusted pro-life expert. Mallory Quigley is the communications director for the Susan B. Anthony list. Mallory, as always, glad to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
First off, what's your reaction to what Congressman Wenstrup said about conscience protection?
Yeah, well, I think he hit the nail on the head. This is the healthcare industry. We want the best people in the healthcare industry. And if we are starting to force and continue to force doctors and nurses to participate in a procedure that is the taking of a human life, that they firmly are opposed in their heart of hearts to doing, we're going to, over time, weed out the best people going into the medical community. I think about my younger sister. She's a nurse, and she is working and caring for people as they're dying, as they are entering the most difficult times of their lives and their families. And we want people of faith and conscience caring for us when we need it most.
And affirming the dignity of life at all stages. Can you clarify something? Weren't there recent actions taken by the Department of HHS to ensure conscience protections? What still needs to happen?
Absolutely. So the administration took a very big, encouraging step forward in creating an entire new office to handling complaints of healthcare professionals that feel that their conscience rights have been violated. And already we see that this is, people are getting the message that the administration is listening, because this new office for conscience rights, they've received more people complaining about their conscience rights being violated in these first 2 months of the year than in nearly all of last year. And certainly more than 8 years under the Obama administration. So that just means that the administration is paying attention to medical professionals, people who are having their conscience rights violated.
And make some changes. We'll see that happen. We've talked about conscience protection on the show, and we've previously asked Senator Mitch McConnell to include it in the upcoming appropriations bill.
Right.
But what's the strategy now?
Right. So it's the same strategy. As excellent as the action taken by the administration is, we really need statutory law so that something as important as conscience, a bedrock of our nation, isn't at the whim of whatever party or elected official is in the White House. We need a private right of action for people to seek relief in court when their conscience rights have been violated. So we need the Conscience Protection Act. The omnibus spending bill, we have until March 23rd to pass it. So we have until that point. And really, this is about getting pro-life Democrats to challenge their party on this, because we have a lot of people on the Republican side who want to see this included, but this is one of those things. The omnibus bill is where both parties need to work together. So is Senator Donnelly, Senator Manchin, Senator Casey, are they going to challenge Democratic leadership on conscience rights? I mean, this is something that everyone should be able to agree on regardless of their position on abortion.
Mallory Quigley of the Susan B. Anthony list, thank you.
My pleasure.
Current U.S. federal law does not sufficiently protect the conscience rights of healthcare professionals and others. There have been instances where healthcare professionals, against their religious or moral convictions, were forced to participate in abortions. That is why the Conscience Protection Act is a top priority for the U.S. bishops and for the pro-life movement today. This week, the U.S. bishops are calling for us to flood Congress with messages that we want to see the Conscience Protection Act enacted. Here's this week's call to action so you can do that. It's simple. Type this website into your computer or smartphone, prolifeweekly.com. Again, that's prolifeweekly.com. Here, you can email your legislator to say you support the Conscience Protection Act and you want them to support it too. If the Conscience Protection Act passes, it would bar the federal government and any state and local governments that receive federal funding from taking action against healthcare professionals who conscientiously object to performing, paying, or participating in any procedure they find morally objectionable. This is fundamental for allowing pro-lifers to live out our beliefs in good conscience. And President Trump has said he will sign this into law if it passes Congress. Do your part to promote this piece of legislation that our U.S. bishops and pro-life leaders are calling for right now. Tell your legislator to support the Conscience Protection Act. You can do this by simply going to prolifeweekly.com. Again, that is prolifeweekly.com. Turning now to more pro-life news, we told you last week about a directive the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops recently sent to churches across the Lone Star State. The directive was painted by many in the media as an order to Texas Catholics to not work with Texas Right to Life. In an initial statement, the pro-life group says they were disappointed but not surprised by what they called an unjustified attack. But Bishop Michael Siss of San Angelo, Texas, clarified the bishop's position, telling EWTN Pro-Life Weekly this was simply a message from the Texas bishops to church pastors.
So this was not a press release. It was not a directive or a mandate to individual Catholics. It was asking our pastors not to use their parish facilities or communications to promote this particular organization.
Some media, as I'm sure you're aware, are saying this story exposes a rift in the Texas pro-life movement. But do you see it that way?
I see even nationally there's a need for greater unity in the pro-life movement in general. Our message will be so much more effective as pro-life Christians if we can speak with unity and seek common ground and treat one another with mutual respect.
You can watch my complete interview with Bishop Michael Siss on EWTN's YouTube page. In Iowa, the state Senate passes a bill that would ban abortions as soon as a baby's heartbeat is detected. The bill would require every woman seeking an abortion be tested for detection of a baby's heartbeat. A heartbeat can be detected around the 6th or 7th week of pregnancy. The Iowa Catholic Conference of Bishops support what they call the life-affirming legislation. The heartbeat abortion ban goes now to Iowa's House of Representatives for a vote. In an overwhelming vote, Florida's State House of Representatives passed a bill to ban dismemberment abortions, also known as dilation and evacuation, or D&E abortions. The procedure involves an abortionist tearing apart a baby limb by limb. Florida's House voted 72-42 in favor of the ban. The bill has yet to be heard by the state's Senate. We go now to pro-life headlines from around the globe. Argentina's conservative president Mauricio Macri says Congress should launch a debate on the legalization of abortion, even though he opposes it. Macri says he favors mature, responsible debates, and he wants Congress to include abortion in its 2018 agenda. Abortion is banned in the South American nation, but there are exceptions in cases of rape and health risks to the woman. The Canadian-based group Euthanasia Prevention Coalition are sounding the alarm. The government may be considering euthanasia for children. The nation legalized euthanasia and assisted suicide in 2016 and since have examined and studied the issue for children. As the EPC points out on their website, next month a medical symposium will feature a session titled Developing a Policy on Medical Assistance in Dying for Pediatric Patients. The group is encouraging people to sign their petition, I Oppose Euthanasia for Children, ahead of the event. And in Rome, Pope Francis affirms the life-saving work of nurses. Speaking to the Federation of Professional Nursing Colleges, Health Assistants, and Child Wardens on Saturday, the Holy Father recalled when a nurse saved his own life in Argentina. In his address, Pope Francis called the nursing profession a real mission and said they are the promoters of the life and dignity of people. And in more international news, we continue to monitor a case in Britain involving toddler Alfie Evans as London's Court of Appeals upholds the High Court's ruling to remove his life support. Alfie is a 21-month-old with an unknown neurological degenerative condition who has been in a semi-vegetative state. British doctors have said further medical efforts are futile and his condition is untreatable. Alfie's parents want continued care for their son and are asking for him to be transferred to the Vatican-linked Bambino Gesù Pediatric Hospital in Rome. We are joined now by a top bioethics expert who's been closely tracking the case. Leslie J. Smith is an award-winning author, a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute's Center on Human Exceptionalism, and a consultant to the Patients' Rights Council. Leslie, thanks for being back with us.
Thanks for having me.
This case is drawing a lot of comparisons to Charlie Gard, a case many of our viewers may remember from last year. What's similar here and what's the difference?
It's strikingly similar, but if I can say it, it's even worse. Charlie Gard was bad enough, but this is worse.
Wow.
The difference is Charlie Gard had a diagnosis. We knew, the doctors knew that he had a genetic condition, that it was a terminal condition, that the chances of the doctor who wanted to help him in New York succeeding were probably very small, but the parents wanted to give it a try.
Right.
In Alfie's case, there is no diagnosis. There is no surety that Alfie is dying. He has a profound cognitive disability. And they're basically saying, well, that's not a life worth living, and if you think so, parents, even though you found another hospital to take him to for treatment, we're going to stop the treatment anyway. Wow. So it's taking Charlie Gard and taking another step down that road.
And it's only been not even a year since the Charlie Gard case. You have been tracking and writing about Alfie Evans, and in a piece for National Review, you write, forcing this baby to die when there is no diagnosis would be an act of naked medical authoritarianism. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Well, yeah, you have a situation in which you have a value judgment conflict. It's not a medical conflict. The doctors are saying this is not a life worth living.
Wow.
So we want to stop the treatment, not because the treatment isn't working, the treatment's keeping Alfie alive. They want to stop the treatment because it is working. In other words, they're saying that Alfie is the one who's futile. The parents are saying, wait a minute, this is our precious baby. We've got another hospital willing to treat him. There is no diagnosis. Let us try to fight to save our baby's life. And the state is saying, no, you can't do that, parents. The doctor's values prevail. The state's values prevail. And if that isn't naked authoritarianism, I'm not sure what is.
What rights do parents have over their child's medical care in the UK? It's
less than we have here. There is a requirement in the UK, as I understand it, that the child's interests be protected. And what's really ridiculous to me is they're saying that the best interest of Alfie is to die, rather than to see if something can be done without a diagnosis. Perhaps something can occur. He's a young child.
Right.
Maybe the brain will bounce back from whatever caused the problem. At least give the parents the right to try to save their child's life. But what's really frightening is they're saying that a life with a profound disability is worse than life itself, and that's than dying, and that's a terrible thing.
That's a devastating message to our brothers and sisters with different disabilities. Finally, from a bioethics standpoint, how do you think healthcare professionals should balance efforts to prolong a life but with the decision to withhold treatment if death is inevitable?
I think when you get down to value judgments, that the values of the patient or the values of the parents in a case like this should prevail unless it can be shown absolutely that it is completely antithetical to the child's welfare or to the patient's welfare. That's normally not the case. We're not talking about a situation where the parents are saying, do something that is clearly not going to work. Right. That would be futile. We're talking about something, and I want to repeat something I said before, that the parents are saying, do what is working, and the doctor's saying, we don't want it to work anymore, that's why we want to take away the treatment. That becomes quite frightening. And when you introduce coercion into a healthcare system where trust is already beginning to leach away, I think it's a very frightening prospect. We should not have coercion in healthcare. Most people, by the way, are going to make the right decision for their loved ones.
I really hope we don't have to talk about any more cases like this. I'm afraid we might. Wesley J. Smith, thank you again for your insight on this.
Well, thanks for having me.
When we come back.
So that's why I'm hesitant to be emotional with him.
You might want to grab tissues for this one, a raw look into one young man's journey to meet his biological parents. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. The greatest destroyer of peace today is abortion, because it is a war against the child, a direct killing of the innocent child. This Women's History Month, we remember the powerful words of an incredible woman, St. Teresa of Calcutta. St. Teresa, pray for us. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. The Oscars are the top honors in the film industry, recognizing excellence and cinematic achievements. So it doesn't make sense why Planned Parenthood would take the stage at the 90th Academy Awards this past weekend. Singer Andra Day and rapper Common invited activists to join them on stage for their performance of Stand Up for Something at the Oscars, a piece nominated for Best Original Song. One of those activists included Cecile Richards, the outgoing president of Planned Parenthood, America's largest abortion provider. The activists, dressed in black, stood under spotlights for what was a largely political performance. Richards posted a number of photos on her social media gushing about the experience. Cecile Richards is stepping down as president of Planned Parenthood this year, but in her 12 years as the head of the abortion business, she made a point to make allies in Hollywood. It's all an attempt to glamorize the abortion industry, to paint Planned Parenthood as some beautiful, harmless, popular, purely pro-woman group. But it's a distraction tactic, and we can still see the truth. The truth is Planned Parenthood killed more than 300,000 unborn lives last year. It is devastating and makes her appearance on the Oscars stage that much more ironic. If the nominated song is supposed to be about social justice, what about justice for the unborn? It is an odd pairing, movie awards and abortion. We can't just overlook that. We need to stop and recognize what is going on here. Abortion propaganda is being pushed down on us from all areas, and we need to watch movies with a watchful eye and be informed on the life issue. And Academy Awards, with this year's record low viewership, I imagine you're doing some reevaluating. My advice, don't align yourself with the abortion industry next time. Remember, when our culture goes towards a culture of death, there is a way for you to build up a culture of life. Follow this week's call to action. This week, we are asking you to tell your legislator to support the Conscience Protection Act. Go to prolifeweekly.com to take action now. David Scotton grew up knowing he was adopted, and when he was 19, had the opportunity to meet his biological parents and capture it on film. In a documentary now available to stream online, witness one family's story that reclaims the beauty of adoption.
Definitely scared of them coming into my life and not fitting into what kind of life I had.
Feeling scared would be natural for anyone meeting their biological parents for the first time in 19 years. Now, add a film crew into the mix.
Originally, this documentary was not originally in my plans.
David Scotton of Louisiana grew up knowing he was adopted. Then, when he was about 18 years old, connected with his biological parents on Facebook. And a year later, they decided to meet, face to face.
At this point, there was no film. I was just sharing my story at events and breakfasts, sharing the adoption message. And then as the executive producer of the film then realized that I was planning on meeting them, he approached me with a very random question that took me off guard. You know, how would you feel, David, if we had a film team document y'all's reunion?
After taking time to pray, discern, and discuss with his family, David gave his answer.
I said, sure. I mean, this is God's calling for me. This is my way to give back to the cause that gave me life.
As we learn in the short documentary that weaves together David's story along with his parents, both adopted and biological, David almost wasn't born.
We went up to the abortion clinic in Indianapolis.
Throughout all the confusion and all the noise, I remember this lady saying, "That baby has 10 fingers and 10 toes, and you're gonna kill it." Can we cut?
I felt like I knew her. I had been inside that facility with her 24 years ago, right? What this film is my way to give back to the cause that gave me what I have today.
I Lived on Parker Avenue, now available to view online, has already been showcased in secular screenings. Benjamin Clapper is executive producer.
Our hope for this is that people will sense the beauty of adoption, and that mothers, fathers, people in our country will realize that adoption is something to really be considered.
The documentary doesn't gloss over the pain that can often come with adoption, though.
I figured he probably hated me when he knew that he was so close to being aborted. Are you mad at me?
Never.
She's a woman that made an incredibly brave decision, a courageous decision, and a decision that is not easy.
And it's been an opportunity to address common misconceptions.
Frequently I get asked, what was it like to meet your mom? What was it like to meet your dad? And my response every time, I get it at every screening, is that I did not meet my mom. I did not meet my dad. Who I met was my biological mother and my biological father. My mom and dad are Jimmy and Susan Scott in Metairie, Louisiana.
With such personal moments captured on tape, the filmmakers hope this family story can capture hearts as well.
We believe if people can come together, we can share the adoption message with the world and really reclaim the beauty of adoption in our society.
If you want to watch this powerful documentary yourself, and I encourage you do, you can watch for free at ilivedonparkerave.com. Or you can watch it right here on EWTN. We're debuting it Saturday, May 10th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Be on the lookout for that. And good luck with not crying happy tears. That's it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us anytime. Just send an email to prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.